Ready to go? So good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be joined by Suzanne Herndl this morning from HR Inspire in Tring. This is James Gentle from ActionCOACH. And today, Suzanne is going to be taking us through how we stay ahead of the curve this year from an HR perspective. But before we dive into that, Suzanne, perhaps you'd want to just introduce yourself, say a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you, James, and ActionCOACH for having me. It's really good to be on here today. So I am a relationship director for HR Inspire, as you say, based in Tring. So we look after an awful lot of SMEs right up to big corporate organisations all over the country who need support with their HR. So very much boutique, very much we either support existing HR teams or imagine those smaller SMEs or startups even that I'm saying, I don't have contracts, I don't have policies, I don't really know where to start, I need some help. So, and everything in between. So what does the relationship director do? I guess in summary, it's my job to talk to business owners of every single size, every day, and either talk to them about the practical, like here and now HR support they need, or what's keeping them awake at night. And what they can't potentially see coming around the corner from a people point of view, and navigating those daily challenges. And I think more than ever, 2023 business owners are just facing just so many people concerns. It's like, where do they start? What do they do?
It's a really live topic, so we're delighted that you're able to join us and hopefully proactively give people a few tips to avoid some of those sleepless nights.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we've built this as a bit of a health check, haven't we, for 2023? And I think you've got some key areas that you want to go into. What do you think? Just to kick us off, what do you think should be included in if someone's starting the year and thinking, well, these are the things I should be thinking about from an HR perspective? What should be on that list?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a dedicated team of really expert HR consultants, and they regularly do health checks with our customers. But actually, whilst we're really seasoned like HR professionals, we're always really mindful of how do we continue to learn and grow? What's out there? What insights are out there that we should know and share with everybody, share with our customers, share with the wider population and community. And actually, there was a really big survey conducted at the end of last year. And it's with expert HR, which lots of HR consultancies draw upon in terms of the just-in-time latest knowledge, employment lawyers also. So it's really, really a great resource for people to draw upon. And actually, there was 4 key areas that came out of that actually for 2023 that said, from a priority point of view, businesses of every single size should be focusing and honing in and doing something about these 4 key areas. So those 4 key areas are employee well-being, financial well-being, how you retain your key workforce, and pay and benefits. So I know that's a bit of a painful one to talk about because the whole cost of living and recession and it's properly all in our face, isn't it? It's all over social media. It's everything we read.
Ignore that elephant, Suzanne. Let's not ignore it.
Yeah, it is an elephant in the room, and let's go there. But actually, let's start with the more human side of things. I think it probably wasn't until COVID hit, the world pandemic hit, and people really started talking about well-being, didn't they, and mental health. And it is a very, very specialist subject. So before I say anything, that's not where we're going to go. We're going to talk very generalist on what does it mean for a business owner that feels a bit under the spotlight, which is this is being talked about everywhere, and I'm not really sure what I should be doing or what I can even do, depending on the size of the business. So, and also with that, James, is, you know, that business owner is thinking, I've got to look after myself as well. I've got to look after my family, because if I don't look after those two things, how on earth can I look after all of my employees and what they need to me? You know, what they're going to need from me. So it really is about prioritizing, and, you know, how do they know what the right thing to do? Well, it's very difficult actually, because all these businesses are very different sizes, they're different sectors, they offer different services, don't they? So in terms of, you know, those tips really to be able to share on this topic is very much about, let's just start talking. You know, let's just bring some of these things to the fore a bit more than we might have in the past. Let's ask really good questions. And if you're not sure how to ask good questions, then I'm sure there's people like me and like you and online that can help people ask better questions, aren't there? But it's also important to give your teams and your employees a voice. So one of the things we did a lot of last year actually was employee surveys, and they don't have to be big and onerous and complex and, you know, take forever. They can be really small, bite-size focus groups, just taking a temperature check, just seeing how the team are feeling, both as a team, but also as individuals. Because without asking those good questions, you know, people are suppressing because they don't want to. We're not used to bringing that openness to work, are we?
Absolutely not. And that's quite a good point you raised there, because I think there's certain businesses will be at different levels culturally that enable you to just go for with an open focus group, for example. So, you know, you'll have to develop, in my opinion, quite a good culture for that to work effectively. If you're not at that level yet, you know, obviously we're helping a lot of people to get to that level. What other smaller things can you do to start that, to give your employees a voice? Listen to them.
It is, you know, it can be as simple as, you know, let's have that, you know, water cooler conversation. Let's make it a little bit more, a tiny bit more formal. So when you see there's those chats going on, either, you know, in a breakout area or making a cup of coffee, or, you know, people, you know, having some lunch, go and join them, go and sit and be part of the team. Like I say, ask some really good questions, find out what they're talking about. It might be that the business is of a certain size that they can almost have a bit of a champion, you know, somebody that's in the team, not necessarily management, but they're really keen to share how the team are feeling, and, you know, what things could potentially be lifting the mood. And I know there's not, you know, an unlimited budget to do nice, fun things, but it could just be as simple as, you know, actually, we're just all going to stop and have lunch together today and have a chat about stuff, what's going on, you know, and that's just in the normal work environment. Maybe there is budget to go and do something fun and an activity and build it into some team building and get people, you know, creative and being really positive. But equally, there's some really serious sort of thoughts going on with individuals worrying about their family, worrying about themselves, worrying about their job and security, and, you know, the anxiety that's causing. And I think if we look back over time, none of us would have ever spoke about those things at work, because we'd be fearful of the repercussions, and what might, you know, how you might be viewed and perceived. But actually, I think, like you said, James, the larger organisations are fortunate enough to be able to have strategized this and to put some really good plans in place. And I think it's really people like you and I and you know, those businesses sharing some of those insights, which is, this has happened on a much bigger scale, but actually let's have a think about how this can happen for you and your size of business that's only got 5 employees or 25 employees or 125.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you've broken that down, because in in its essence, really, you're just asking the leaders or managers and the business to take a few moments to understand the feelings of their team members and co-workers, aren't you?
Yeah. And let's face it, some of those business owners and leaders would be the first to admit, I'm not the best people person. My skills over here, my skills technology, or my skills finance, or my skills this. So we're asking them sometimes, to do something that's maybe a little bit uncomfortable for them and a little bit alien, and they might need a bit of help with that.
Yeah, no, it's just quite interesting though, because I've spoken to a number of people, and they often come and say, look, I need to motivate my team. I'm going to put a bonus scheme in place. And bonus schemes have their place, and they can be really, really effective, of course. But one of the things I tend to draw them back on is to say, well, do you know your team? Do you know what's going to motivate them? So having those conversations, if you can have, one little conversation with each of your team members or direct reports to know something about them, then you can actually get a guide of those feelings and the kind of things that are going to motivate them as well.
It is, it's really small things, know the names of their children, know what, they go to school, what sort of year they're in, know if they're going to take a holiday this year, or, just really, really small things. Because now, if I move to sort of the financial well-being, we said earlier when we opened the programme about it is the elephant in the room. Those business owners will be also worrying about their increase of electricity bills and utilities and keeping everybody, because you can't work in a cold, miserable, environment. They need to make sure that they've got some facilities to make sure that the staff are really, working and energized and motivated, and they enjoy coming to work, because what a miserable place it would be if they didn't. But it is also pretty hard for everybody when you wake up in the morning and you either put on the radio or GMTV, and it's just littered with doom and gloom, isn't it? And cost of living and how expensive everything is. And again, talking about things we might not have talked about in the workplace before, is how often now are you talking to a colleague about how much the price of a pack of butter's gone up, or how much is your utility bill compared to theirs? You just wouldn't have done it, would you? Exciting
conversations we have, aren't they, don't they?
It's just like you just would never have gone there. So it is possible to do some things, and it doesn't have to be expensive. One of the things, and I know that we've certainly explored it, is about offering staff some financial advice. So lots of financial advisors out there, not going to, you can look them all up yourself. But it doesn't have to be expensive. And it might make the real difference of, having somebody in your team being able to sleep that bit better at night, because they've just processed, where they are financially and what that means to them and what the future might look like, and being able to have a bit of budget guidance perhaps, or how they factor for that unforeseen, car catastrophe when the battery dies and you've got an unexpected bill, or the washing machine dies, something like that. And that will not only help them, but ultimately sort of help their families. So that is something that I'd be saying, go away and just have a look if there's somebody locally that can offer that, and whether it's very sort of general and generic and they come in and do a talk, or whether it's something a little more personalized, which they can do online. I've looked into a couple of these things. Very much so, and I think could really, add some peace of mind. There's lots of examples I'm hearing of people taking second jobs because they're worried about paying their existing bills and their salary not covering what they need to from a necessity point of view, let alone any sort of luxury or a school trip or anything like that. And therefore, that's fine if people take second jobs, but the business also needs to be mindful of What does it say in the contract about taking a second job? What do my policies say or staff handbook say about taking a second job? And also, what is that second job? Because if you've got people in a, I don't know, I'm thinking off the hoof now, but in a manufacturing role that's dealing with machinery all day, and then they're going to go and do a driving job through the night. I mean, it's just an accident waiting to happen, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Health and safety.
So, yeah, I mean, you may say, as a business owner, you might say it's absolutely fine for any of my team to take a second job, but also business, protect yourself, be mindful of the employee and their well-being, and, what type of job is it? What hours are they doing? And again, it goes back to that. Let's have really good conversations, because it's happening. And sometimes businesses may not be aware of it, especially those businesses where they've got home working, for example. And you don't know if the employee's doing a second job necessarily or not.
Let's say that you haven't even thought about it as part of your contract or policies as a smaller business. What advice would you give those business owners?
Pick up the phone to HR Inspire. We can help you. Obviously. Seriously, you do need help with that, because it's bound by terms and conditions, so it has to be done properly. It needs to be done by it needs to be written by a professional, but it also needs to be practical. It needs to work for the business, doesn't it? And it's not just a policy for policy's sake. But definitely urge businesses to check if it's something that they've either not thought about, perhaps they should, and they can sort of tick that box as in a health check, it doesn't apply to me, or actually, yes, this is happening, I have got a person or a couple of people, and maybe I should just revisit those policies and make sure that they're watertight, and I'm looking after the business and looking after the employee as well.
I guess as a business owner, if you're not aware of it, then the first thing you could do, although it sounds so obvious, is to ask people.
Yes.
And I guess you might need a reason to ask. And the example that you gave would be a perfect reason to ask. It's like, well, we're concerned about your well-being as well, and health and safety. We need to make sure we've got X, Y, and Z in place. If you are going to do another job.
You just need to tell us, it might be, we spoke about, let's sit down and just have our sandwiches, have our lunch together. And it might be, is anybody considered taking a second job with everything that's going on? Make it okay to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. And who knows, there may be other opportunities within that business for additional work or additional income.
Definitely with
holidays
for overtime. For overtime. And it's funny you mentioned that then, James, because actually there's a term that I keep hearing quite often at the moment, and it's called quiet hiring. And that's because it's happening despite the recession. So some companies are going out there and announcing what they're recruiting for and things.
Yeah.
But also those companies may be going through, we've been doing lots of redundancies, restructures, and therefore this quiet hiring has become a term, which is they still need to have people redeployed into the correct roles. They've still got to do some upskilling. They've still got to have people in the right place. And hiring is going to continue. And also it's really competitive. It's so competitive in terms of and it's difficult. So people are finding it really difficult to get good people. Businesses, like I say, they're looking at whether they have to restructure, whether they need to do sort of any changes to people's job descriptions and redundancies, which is obviously a challenge for any business. And even really smaller businesses have been talking to us more recently about, I've only got these people, but I don't think I can keep them. So it's really trying to help them, whether that job can be saved in any way, shape or form, before they obviously make the ultimate decision that perhaps they aren't able to keep that particular role. The other thing that has happened an awful lot, probably more than ever before in 2023, certainly, that we've seen is salary benchmarking at all sorts of levels, and business wanting to know that they are, even if they're not the most competitive, they are certainly within the band that says, I know I'm paying the right salary for the level of work that I'm asking, this person to do. And so if there is a difficult future conversation that they're having a chat about, that there's some evidence around, what that salary benchmark looks like, and therefore hopefully can result in a good conversation that means that person's not looking elsewhere for a little bit more money.
Yeah, you've got a really interesting dynamic in the market, haven't you? Because you've got really low unemployment rates, so, and the cost of living and inflation going up. So there's a need for people to be paid more generally, and be competitive within that field. And because you're in that field, then if you are looking for a job, you can be a bit more picky. So you've got all kinds of questions, motivations beyond money, haven't you? Going on
definitely
in people's heads as well.
And employees are more than ever before, the kind of the tables turned a little bit in terms of their expectations of an employer. It's kind of, what are you going to offer me? It's not about how many hours or how many days am I going to work and what's my salary. It's much the depth and breadth of what they want to know right now is, how are you going to look after me? My, well-being, and what does the support look like? What does the development look like? What if there is hybrid working, what does that look like in terms of support? So there's a lot of new dynamics for business owners to be navigating. I wanted to say the word worrying about now, but I don't want to say worrying about, because it's just, we've evolved, we've moved on. So it's about how do they navigate these new things, and they're not going away. So, right, okay, where can I get help? What type of help do I need? How do I communicate this? Because it's one, often you'll find a business owner's busy, trying to solve some sort of dilemma in the background, but then often not sharing that is something that they're looking at, because they're fearful perhaps they can't do anything about it. But then meanwhile, you have a perhaps disgruntled employee that's saying, nobody cares about this in this business, when actually it's quite the opposite.
Interesting, yeah. And it's actually almost, you could answer the same questions, even if you're not in the market currently to be recruiting, then actually, if you're able to answer some of those questions that you've just raised about what employees want, how they're going to look after me, what they're going to do for my mental health, etc., then you're better placed to retain and develop the existing people you've got.
Definitely.
That's a risk
to manage. Definitely. So, we've talked quite a lot about business owners and leaders, but actually let's just touch on, James, like managers, the line managers, cold face, every single day managing these teams. They need more skills, or perhaps more development to manage up and down, manage the expectations of the owners and bosses that say, this is the plan, this is the strategic direction, this is what you need to deliver. But they've also got the teams on a day-to-day basis with the normal daily life saying, right, I need to be engaged, I need to feel motivated, I need to enjoy coming to work. And actually, Mr. Manager, Mrs. Manager, it's your job to provide that to me. And so we've got this whole raft, haven't we, of middle managers that perhaps need some support and some development, to sort of be learning on the job. How do they help multi-skill? How do they upskill their existing workforce so they don't lose them to somebody else and have to go back to that very costly recruitment process?
So almost, management training and development becomes part of a retention strategy, not just for the manager, but for the people working alongside them and with them.
Yeah, definitely. And the fourth point that I started the morning with is the whole pay and benefits. And I've already mentioned about the salary benchmarking, but actually companies might be of a size where they're able to provide maybe private medical or dental or some sort of health cash plans, but actually some of those things might be going by the wayside this year because companies cannot afford to do that, because what they've had to do is put money into a retention bonus or put money into a cost of living increase. So it's, well, what can they do to still look after the employee and make sure that they feel well looked after and it's a great place to work? And again, there's lots of availability online around EAPs, which are employee assisted plans and programs, and that gives them sort of coaches and tips. And some companies may have heard of them, some companies have not, but they're actually very low cost and really, really help a business an awful lot. Have something in place to give them access to professionals across all different subject matters that could be really beneficial. So definitely worth taking a look at that as a low cost option to help employees.
Good recommendation, and often gives people a bit of a choice of picking the perks and benefits that would suit them the most, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I know, and I've heard of lots of businesses that have done one-off bonus, cost of living bonuses, one-off salary increases, but also what comes with that for the business is the increase in NI, the increase in pension contribution. So again, more headaches for the business owners. It's not as simple as we're going to put X amount of percent on top this year, because then that's fixed, isn't it? It's not only fixed, you've got all those other on costs. Absolutely.
You mentioned in passing the retention bonuses. Now, I've been speaking to a few business owners recently on them. Are they becoming a more
yes, definitely. Definitely. And there's lots of different ways to obviously structure a retention bonus based on, your type of business. But generally, it's to do a number of things. It's to show the employee they feel that they are really valued, that you want to keep them in the business, and what they deliver for the business is really important to you. It gives you a little something back where they're on the hook, because depends how long you say to get part one. We pay this right now, for example, but part two, we might only pay in the new year in 2024. So it's meaningful enough for the employee to want to stick around because they'd like that bonus. But B, it's got, it's that win-win, isn't it? It's showing that they're really important and their contribution is really valued. But it's also trying to give the business some certainty that you're not going to lose those skills to somebody else in the short term.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you've broken it down to sort of a more immediate part, because, I guess if someone was to get it wrong, I'll be the example of getting it wrong. You might go, here's a retention bonus, and then think, well, hang on, my cost of living is right now. I need cash flow right now. That's not helping me at all, and it could backfire.
Exactly. And so it will be and that's why you can't say, one size fits all, because it most certainly doesn't. It's absolutely very individual and bespoke to that particular business and what's going to work and what's important right now. And then I guess just timing wise, James, just to conclude, is to raise to all you business owners out there listening this morning, is you've also got some increases coming up in April, which is national minimum wage going up to over £10. That's going up to £10.42 on the 1st of April. You also need to factor in, when you're doing your planning and your strategizing and your financial meetings, that 10th of April, you've also got some statutory increases around sick pay and maternity and paternity, parental leave, adoption leave, bereavement. So all of this is an increased cost to the business that you need to be, if you're not already aware of.
should be reviewing that and seeing the implications for them, because it's gonna hit them in April. Whatever happens. And I've got a question here. Is there any other legislation that people should be on the lookout for?
There are some up and coming pieces of legislation, depending on your size of business, that you may want to sort of forthcoming changes that have been through government and the private members bill. And they're around sexual harassment, flexible working, leave for carers, extending the redundancy pay for women and new parents. And if you're in the hospitality business, not retaining tips and gratuity. So if any of those things like apply to you, then, you know, take a bit of a deeper look into what the implications are for you and your business.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that response, and indeed for joining us today. I think, you know, there's been a whole host of areas that I think people can dive in across, you know, employee well-being, financial well-being, making sure that they're retaining their workforce and they're planning their budgets for those pay and benefit changes that are impacting in April. So thank you very much indeed, Suzanne, for joining us this morning.
No, you are welcome. And also there's lots to look forward to. We're going to have a great year.
Excellent. Well, happy New Year to you, and happy New Year to all you business owners. I'm sure if you've got any more questions for me or Suzanne, she would be very happy to pick them up. So get in touch with us if you do have questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Cheerio. See you all soon. Yes. Bye.